It's really a pleasure to introduce Mr. Nick Banks. He's Managing Director of Front Street Commercial Real Estate Group, and he oversees all the activities of Front Street Commercial in brokerage, finance, and property management. He's been in, I don't know quite how he does this, he's been in commercial real estate since 1994. I assume that was about 10 years old when he started. But he has a BA in finance from our beloved school. Front Street Commercial, just to give you some idea, was recognized last year in the Gator 100 of a list of fastest growing Gator-grown community or companies, and they were actually 10th in the list, which is a great tribute to the progress and growth and the effective management. Nick is we're delighted to say he's a member of our advisory board, and many of our students have discovered that's a great thing already, to have him as a resource. He's highly active in the business and civic community. He has been one of the critical persons in bringing a chapter of ULI into this neighborhood, which is a great thing for all of us and for the business community. He has an extraordinary commitment to community service, which I hope he'll tell you something about. He says that his firm does some unique things. And for example, he was the 2013 chair of the American Heart Association Heart Walk here in Gainesville, and it was an unprecedented success. So we think he's an unprecedented success, and we're delighted to have him here to introduce you to him today. Nick, welcome.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, and thank you for the nice introduction. I'm honored that Dr. Archer asked me to come do this, and I hope that they don't change the name of it from distinguished to not so distinguished after I'm here. So, and Dr. Archer was actually one of my professors when I was here at UF from '86 to '90. So it's really neat to be a part of this program now that I live here in Gainesville. So. Dr. Archer said that the typical format for this is a 45-minute presentation and 45 minutes of Q&A, and I'm not going to do that to you. So I want to make this as interactive as possible. So feel free to interrupt me at any time. If you guys think of a question along the way, I want to make this more of a dialogue than a presentation, from me just kind of spilling out a bunch of information about myself and my career. So I think I'd get real bored with that, and I think you guys would too. So feel free to stop me and interrupt me at any time. Just a little bit of background about my career, and it's neat. Like I really enjoy the times that I get to come back here and talk to students and be a part of this campus. And it was many years ago that I was a student here, but and you guys will experience this at some point in your lives, when you step back on this campus, it kind of brings you back to that part of your life, which is neat. It's one of the neat things about living in Gainesville now as a grown-up and living here. It's a great way to kind of stay connected to that part of your life. I was actually Pam DeMichael's busboy when she was in a sorority, and I probably spilled food on her, and so Gainesville's a great place to live, and I hope you all are enjoying your time here, and I hope some of you decide to stay here. So I graduated in 1990, as Dr. Archer mentioned. And it's funny, my first job actually was a result of a situation sort of like this. Somebody came in and spoke in one of my finance classes, and he talked about mortgage banking. And it was an industry that I didn't know existed at that time in my life. I just thought when people bought houses, they went to their bank and they got a loan, and that was it. But there were these facets of that business that this speaker came in and talked about that day that I just didn't know existed. And so I became very intrigued in that discussion about that business, and I literally chased him out after the discussion that he had done in our class and said, can I call you sometime? I'd like to come work for your company. And so he was nice enough to meet with me. His company was brand new and just starting, and so he didn't have a position for me, but he introduced me to somebody from the company that he used to work for, which was Bank Boston Mortgage, which is no longer in business. But that's how I got my first job. And so I, applaud you guys for taking the time to do this, even though they probably made you do it. But coming and listening to people, they're in business and in industry and everything, because it's great that I think UF, and especially with the real estate program here, it's a phenomenal opportunity to be able to interact with board members and everything. So my first job, I really wanted to be in commercial real estate, but I graduated in 1990, and it wasn't as bad of a recession as what we're just now coming out of, but it was pretty bad. A company that I later went to work for in my career, I really wanted to work for them. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, and they were the sort of premier developer down there, and I somehow found my way into their office one day and was able to sit down with them, and I literally offered to work there for free because I knew that they weren't hiring, and they just had nothing. They were like, we're just getting rid of people left and right, and there's nothing for you to do. So I did find that first job in the mortgage banking industry, and I did that for about 4 years until I was able to get into commercial real estate. I spoke to a small group of students before we did this, and I made the comment that when I look back on my career now and I talk about it, and you'll see as I kind of go through the progression, it sounds like a very well thought out plan, and it was not at all. It was a series of fumbles and lucky breaks and mistakes and failures and stuff like that sort of all added up cumulatively that that brought me here where I am. And I'm grateful for all that, all the good and bad along the way, and so that's one thing that I would say is don't overthink too much like that first position when you guys graduate. It may just be a step in the foundation to a larger opportunity that you may not see clearly at this point. So I bounced through the mortgage industry for 4 years, got a job in leasing, was my first for a developer, which was my first job in commercial real estate. And then I went from there to GE Capital, which was like my first legit job in commercial real estate. That was also the first time I'd ever worked for a big company, and it was the first time I ever had a salary in my career. So before that, everything was commission only. And I thought at that stage in my life that that's just what grown-up people do, is they get a salary, and I need to start acting like a grown-up now. And I had one child and another on the way, and I felt like that was the right thing to do. For me, that was a very confining time of my life, and I realized that was not what I wanted to do. I didn't like working for a big company, and that's for some people that's a fit, and they see opportunity there. And there are people that I worked with at GE Capital that are still there, which is now 15 years later. But for me, I knew it wasn't a fit. I went from there to Stiles Corporation, which is a development firm in Fort Lauderdale that maybe many of you have heard about if you've spent any time down there. And that was a great job and a great opportunity. I was on the finance side of the business as director of finance, so I got to finance all of the development projects that we did. And I also handled dispositions and sold all of the projects that we built. And I loved it. I loved what I got to work on. I loved the people that I worked with, but I had that entrepreneurial itch. And so I started Front Street in 2002, honestly without much of a plan, excuse me, other than I want to start my own company, and I'll figure it out as I go along. So in hindsight, that was probably, I made it riskier than it really needed to be. But I just felt like, there was an opportunity out there, and I wanted to put myself in a situation where I could be entrepreneurial and really seek out opportunities. So the company, so I guess that's now, 13 years ago or so that I started it. I've really gone through 3 different transitions and adaptations over that time. So I started out doing financing and a little bit of brokerage at the beginning. That led to some development opportunities. So myself and one of the guys that I worked with at Stiles, we started developing projects together down in South Florida. And I moved to Gainesville in the middle of some of those projects, really just as a place to live. So I lived most of my life in South Florida at that point, and I was just kind of ready to live somewhere else. My children, who are now, my 2 older kids who are now 15 and 13, were 4 and 2 at the time. I just felt like it was a good time to make a move, and Gainesville had always been on my radar, and I just wanted to pick this as a place to raise my family. So I really kind of moved to Gainesville without much of a plan either. And so for the first few years I was here, all my business was out of town. I didn't do any business here, so I made friends and met people and everything, but really had no business ties here. And so I finished, my partner and I finished our last project in South Florida, like down to the wire, like right before the music stopped with our economy. The last sort of piece of business that we accomplished, we closed a permanent loan on a shopping center that we built that we actually just sold this year, so we held it that long, but it was the last CMBS loan that was closed in Broward County before the meltdown. So we were that close to the wire, and that was not skill, I can tell you. That was just luck, you know. And if we had started that project 6 months later, or if we had, you know, if our contractor had met some kind of delay, and we had missed it by a few months, like my world would have looked pretty different, you know, at that stage of my life. Like it would have been pretty ugly, I think. So, you know, you guys were probably still, you know, many of you in high school or maybe undergrad, you know, when that recession was going on, but nobody really thought, I think when it first started, that it was going to last as long as it did. And so my partner and I sort of did what a lot of other people in the business did, is we just kind of kept operating as normal. And at that point, I'd been through some cycles before, and it's you know, they always happen and they will continue to happen. And so we just treated it like any other cycle and kept doing what we do. And so we were trying to put sites under contract and you know, talking to tenants, but you literally couldn't get anything done. And so I woke up probably in the middle of 2009 and realized I had kind of been getting up and going to work every day, but hadn't done anything in a year and a half. So I had nothing to show for it. And out of frustration and boredom, probably more than anything, I just realized I've got to adapt my company again. And so this, you know, this is one of those lessons that I learned along the way. Like, I think whether you're a business owner or an employee at a company or you know, in a partnership or anything that you're doing, like flexibility and willingness to adapt is really crucial, I think. And I think that as I look forward in our, certainly the real estate business or any career I think that you choose, that ability to adapt quickly is I think going to become more and more crucial, just because things move at a much more rapid pace than they ever did. So the adaptation that started in 2010 and is really what we do now is, you know, at that point I had lived in Gainesville for about 5 years, and so I had this neat benefit of being an observer of this market but not really participating in it. And so my observation was there is really a pretty antiquated world in terms of commercial real estate in this town. So there were some commercial brokers that were doing the majority of the business, but they worked for residential firms. And so in most of the bigger markets that I had done business in, that just never happened. There were commercial-only firms that were specialized. And so I had always sort of seen that as an opportunity, but never really had the time or the inclination to pursue it. But in the middle of 2009, those wheels started turning in my head, and I said, you know what, this is an opportunity, and I'm going to pursue it. And so that is what, you know, almost everybody I talked to about it thought it was a bad idea and that it wouldn't work and that I didn't know anybody here and I'm not from here and so does all the business here and no one's heard of your company and you're from South Florida. People don't like people from South Florida. And so there were all these reasons. And so the way I heard all of those, those negative comments were, this is, I think, a bigger opportunity than I thought, because I felt like so many people were trying to talk me out of it that I must be onto something. And maybe that was just me trying to convince myself of what I wanted to hear. But I took the plunge and kind of rebranded the company and came up with a new logo and just went out and started talking to people. So that was, you know, I guess about 4 years ago. You know, I was a one-man show. Just my friend used to joke that he said, "Your business is so small, you're not even a mom and pop business. You're just pop." So, I mean, it was as small as it could be, but it was you know, it was fun, and people started you know, hiring me to either represent them to find space or to sell a piece of property, and it just kind of grew from there. And so now we're, you know, we're by no means a huge company. I mean, we're still a very small team, but you know, there's about 15 of us, and we do brokerage primarily here in Gainesville, but we've got an office in Ocala and Tampa, in Orlando, and now South Florida. We're doing business in Tallahassee. We don't have an office there, but I hope to at some point. And same thing with Jacksonville. So it's really been more gratifying and fun than I thought it would be. So that's kind of the story of how I got from this room didn't exist when I was here, but how I got from this campus to to what my business looks like today. So and I've got some other slides and everything that I want to show you, really just as kind of talking points to talk about some different things. But I want to kind of pause and just see if anybody has any questions or anything now. Yeah. The hardest thing was finding the conviction to stay true to the mission that I really thought was creating the opportunity. And so you guys have probably all been in Gainesville long enough to know that there's a lot of commercial real estate here that doesn't really look like commercial real estate. So there's up and down 13th Street is a good example. 13th Street was at one time a residential neighborhood, so you still see some remnants of that. And so I always use the example that, and I didn't say this to clients straight out, but this was sort of the vision I had in my head, is I want us to be known as the brokerage that handles like the Publix anchored shopping centers, not the cat doctor that's in the old house on 13th Street. And so so it took a lot of discipline and conviction to stay true to that, because when you're trying to start a business and somebody's willing to hire you, your tendency is to say yes to everything. So I had to say no to some things very early on that I felt like if I had said yes to them, it would have set the direction and tone of my company, and then a year later, I wouldn't have been able to differentiate myself from anybody else. I'd be chasing the same thing. So there's a book called The Blue Ocean Strategy that is and it's one of those business books, like a lot of business books, that it teaches the lesson in the first 20 pages, and then it repeats the lesson for 180 more pages. But it basically is, most companies compete against each other in the red ocean. And so they're trying to basically just do incrementally better than their competitor in something. So a blue ocean company tries to create a whole different category and separate themselves. So I wanted to create a different category. And so this market uses MLS, okay, with multiple listing service, which, if any of you have ever bought a house, that's how you search for a house. Commercial brokers in this market, because they were all coming from residential companies, used MLS, and that's not something that I ever used when I did commercial real estate anywhere. So we decided to say no to that, and we got all kinds of flack, from the competing firms that, well, you have to be on it, and who's going to find your listings, and no one's going to do business with you. And that took a lot of conviction, that everybody was telling us, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, it's not going to work, it's not going to work, it's not going to work, you have to do it this way, because this is the way we do it here. And so, there was that. Really kind of makes you think. It's hard to kind of dig deep sometimes and find all that conviction. Yeah. Again, I'm glad my career worked out the way it did, and it was not entirely, some grand vision that I had. But having a background in finance, I thought was a very solid foundation in hindsight, because it exposed me to a lot of things, a lot of different markets, allowed me to create a lot of relationships, and it introduced me to a lot of different product types. So, I would say in the beginning, you want to sort of create as broad of a base of experience as you can. But as your career goes on, the tendency is that people generally become more specialized. In Gainesville, because of the size of our market, we're the only commercial-only firm, okay? But if we got any more specialized than commercial-only, there's just not enough business here to do. So we do about as much office as we do retail. But in other parts of the state, we're primarily retail, because that's where we're able to best transfer our relationships that we have. So it's one of those it depends answers, unfortunately. Yeah.
I'm interested in
Yeah. Well, one member of my team is Virginia McCool, if she could wave. Ginny, do you want to get up and speak? I'm just kidding. It's kind of a funny story. So Ginny has been with me now longer than anybody that's on our team. Ginny was an undergrad here at UF and babysat for us when our twins were born, who are now 5. So that's how Ginny and I were connected. So that turned from a part-time internship into a part-time job into a full-time job when she graduated, and she is an integral part of our team now. The first broker that I ever hired, that's tough. That's like finding that person that is willing to basically buy into the vision that is not yet fully established, and help create that. So each hire since then becomes a little easier because they have something to look at. I was just a guy with an idea, and that is a hard thing for people to sign up for, I think. So I'm very grateful for the people that, like Ginny and others that came on early and sort of, believed enough in me to take that chance and take that risk, so I think it's less risky now for people. Yes. This is going to sound like I'm anti sort of real job. So everybody I don't think there's any right or wrong, and it's really there are I think you have to be crazy to be wired the way I am, or anybody that's in the brokerage business, because it's a crazy business, and you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from, and thank God not everybody's wired like that. And you either, I think you are or you're not, and so that people have different risk tolerances. So that's my disclaimer before I'll say how I felt. Okay, so how I felt when I was at Stiles, and so Stiles was the company that I begged for to work for free when I first graduated. So, I kind of when I got that job, I kind of felt like I had come full circle, and I had a really cool job when I was there, and I felt like, man, I live in South Florida, I work for the best developer that's here, I have this awesome job, this is it. And so I worked there for about a year, and I had my first review with my boss. And so we go to lunch, and the review was awesome. It really was. And he gave me a raise. And I told him right then, I said, I think I'm going to quit soon. He's like, but it occurred to me at that lunch that I personally, and this is the way I'm wired, I didn't like how it felt that somebody else was telling me what I was worth. I liked being in a position where I was able to either succeed or fail on my own. That I didn't like him, and I knew as long as I stayed there, the name of the company is Stiles, and it's owned by a guy named Terry Stiles, and that's not my last name. So I was never going to own that company or probably any piece of it. So my option was, I'm either going to stay here, and every year I'm going to have a conversation like this, and they're going to decide what I'm worth. And so that was, I guess 13 or 14 years ago. So I was 30, how old am I? I was 33, 34 at the time, okay? So I sat there and I kind of saw the next 10 years of my life kind of flash in front of me, what if I'm having this conversation when I'm 44 or 54 or whatever? What then? What if I don't like what they have to say? What if they don't think they want to pay me this anymore? And so to me, I said, you know what, there's, and this is advice I give to young people who think they have any inclination of starting their own business. There is never a better time to do it than right now. And I would say that to you today or yesterday or 5 years from now, because your obligations in life always become more, not less. You always, are responsible for generally more people in life, and not less. And so I just knew the longer I stayed there, the harder it would ever be to leave if I was going to leave. And I felt like, you know what, if I leave and start my own business and it's a complete disaster, I can bounce back and I'll find something to do. So to me, that staying there seemed riskier than leaving, which is counterintuitive, and I understand that, but that's how I felt, yeah.
That for those of us that are looking into or thinking about going into brokerage after we're finished and making a career out of that.
Don't do it.
I'm just kidding. I've spoken to people from two camps, and some say, oh, it's good to get out, work as an analyst or doing market research or something, learn the market that you're in, and then try to do it. I've talked to other people who have said, don't do that, just go out straight and start doing brokerage as early as you can. You have no commitments right now, it's better to just do it early on, and then you won't get dependent on or reliant on or used to having a steady paycheck.
Yeah.
Then you'll just be used to doing commission. So what's your kind of opinion on that?
You know, being a broker is probably as close to owning your own business as you could get. You know, I mean, you essentially are in a lot of ways. I mean, you're anything where you're paid 100% on commission. So I'd say it's probably the same answer. If you want to go that way, there's no better time to start than now. That said, this business or any business is all about relationships. And so, you know, you need some basis for relationships, because that's, you know, people do business with people that they have a relationship of trust with. So it's hard to sometimes jump out into this business if you don't have that foundation of relationships. Did I see a hand over here? Yeah.
So, I mean, you started out as a broker, now you're a firm with a lot of people, and you're growing very quickly. How do you manage your time between brokerage activities and being the head of a company that's growing so quickly?
Not very well. No, it's hard. It's a struggle. We talk about it a lot internally. Like I've gone in a short period of time from being the person who was doing everything to now I'm trying to back myself out of the transaction side of the business and be there to help grow the company and support the team that we have and help them grow and help them develop, you know, leadership and growth opportunities and things like that. So it's but the business sort of naturally pulls you back into the minutia of deals, of transactions. And so many of the relationships that we have, especially here locally, are relationships that are my relationships. And so those clients, you know, their tendency when they need something is to call me, even if there's another broker on our team now that internally is maybe running lead on that deal. So it's a struggle, and I have to sort of find that balance. I try to find that balance between spending enough time working strategically to grow the company and helping create opportunities for everybody on our team, because if the pie stays the same size, there's no growth opportunities for everybody. So I've challenged, you know, everybody on our team, like don't think of what you're doing now as this is your job forever. Like I want everybody here, you know, to be leading a team of people within this organization, you know, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and everything. So, yeah.
When a client calls you with a potential deal and your employee's working on 100% commission, that deal is directly affecting their pay. How do you determine who you hand it off to, or if you take it yourself and potentially take it from an employee?
You know, it depends on the deal, the client, the complexity, and who's the best fit, you know, for getting it done. So we have a typical, I wish we had like old-fashioned, like, I guess there was one back there, I'm not going to draw. A typical brokerage company looks like, you know, a broker at the top and a bunch of associates that are all running their own business. And just from talking to you guys, I know a few of you have family members in the real estate business and even the residential business. That is a real siloed type of operation. So within, take Bossart Realty is a firm here in town. So those individual residential brokers are out there trying to create their own brand, because they're really competing with their coworkers as much as they're competing with the people from XYZ brokerage. I worked in an environment like that for a short period of time at Marcus and Millichap, and people used to have to lock their desks at night because other brokers would be like trying to pilfer through other brokers' activity to see what kind of business they could steal from them, and I hated it. It was terrible. And so when I realized, you know, hey, there's opportunity for more than just a one-man show here, I vowed to never allow an environment like that to exist. So we do some things that are kind of unique in our industry. Like, we don't put names on signs, so my name's not on a sign. It's Front Street, and we have a team approach with all of our clients. And so you don't just hire when you hire Front Street, you don't just get a broker. There's generally a team that is working on that listing or that client relationship. And, excuse me. And I think that helps tear down a lot of those walls. It's you know, what we've stayed away from is each individual broker creating their own separate and unique branding. And so we share a database, so all of our clients are on an open database. So, and what we've seen, that takes a lot of trust, and it takes a lot of just belief in our system and our culture. But it's a great system, you know, that we've got, and it's unique in our industry. We do these kickoff calls with listing clients when we take a new listing, and it's the entire brokerage team, so even our brokers from out of town. Jenny, who does all of our marketing. We have a client relations person that handles all of our inbound calls and our bookkeeping and everything like that. We do property management, so we have our property management team on the call. So that client is now surrounded by this entire team, and all of us in some fashion will brainstorm, work with, or show their property or whatever it is. And it's a very unique kind of process. Yeah.
At what point did you realize you needed to open up offices in other cities, and how did you go about doing that, finding talent and finding someone to do this?
So far, it's all been either client-driven or team member-driven. So we followed client relationships to Ocala, and we did some business in Ocala from Gainesville. That kind of got us to a point where we felt like we had sort of done as much as Ocala is, you know, 30, 40 minutes south of here, okay? But there's nothing in between. So for me, 30 or 40 minutes away, like I was thinking of it in South Florida terms when we first started doing business there, that all right, that's like driving from whatever, Fort Lauderdale to Hollywood, and it's one continuous city. But Gainesville and Ocala are two separate and distinct communities. So we felt like we did all the business we could do there from afar, and we needed to have a person on the ground there. And so the right person just kind of surfaced, and his name's Nick Robinson. He actually sought us out, and we had like an open house at our office that we're in now, and he kind of showed up there and would talk to us, and we had done a couple deals with him. And so he's one of those guys who just kind of kept surfacing. And so we talked, and that was our first office outside of Gainesville, which, like hiring the first person, that was the hardest sort of first step. So I felt like at that point we had sort of proven this unique concept that we have for brokerage here in Gainesville. But what I didn't know, but I suspected, is, you know, would that resonate anywhere else? Or did we just get lucky and this is kind of a weird town and it worked here? So Ocala was an experiment also. As soon as we hired him, and he's a guy that's born and raised in Ocala, and didn't have a lot of commercial real estate experience, so he's pretty green in the business, but it just took off. And so if you drive around Ocala now, you'll see a lot of Front Street signs all over, and we opened that off. I think we're literally just coming up in a week or so on our 1-year anniversary of opening that office. So that led to Tampa, and Mike Perry is our director there. He went through this program a few years ago. Chris Remmett is one of his classmates. Chris just opened an office for us in Orlando. So it's like anything else, like one thing kind of helps lead to the next. And then South Florida, we're back in business in South Florida because one of our interns that was here, that was going to work for us in our brokerage office here in Gainesville, her fiance got a job down in Fort Lauderdale with a construction firm, and she wanted to move there. And so she came to me and was asking for career advice, and I said, why don't you just work for us down there? And so that's how that happened. So none of it has been like me sitting, you know, staring at the globe saying, here, you know, that's our next domain. It's not that well thought out. But Tallahassee is, we followed some client relationships up there. We've got 3 or 4 listings in Tallahassee now. I hadn't been to Tallahassee in years, and, you know, being a Gator and living in Gainesville, like we all snub our noses at Tallahassee. But I tell you, there's a lot going on there. I was blown away. And so, and it's very much sort of in the dark ages from a brokerage standpoint, like Gainesville was. So, you know, we will have an office at some point, hopefully soon, in Tallahassee. So that's how it's grown organically, you know. And for us, our culture and the way we interact with each other and the way we do things is the most important thing. So it's hard to grow any other way but organically, with that as a mission. Look, you can't go twice in a row.
You talked about building relationships. I was wondering if you could talk about how, and then how you turn those relationships into clients, and then if you could maybe describe how you got your first client here in Gainesville.
Okay, let me actually. We went through so much trouble to pull these slides up. These are just like kind of some talking point slides, but this was the very first slide that I had. Relationships are all that matter. Those connections with people. It's easy to get down into the weeds from a technical standpoint, and we're all trying to build skills and knowledge and all that, and that's certainly important. That has to be there. But in terms of doing business, people, it's as simple as this. People do business with people they like and trust. And that's not like magic. Like you think about people you do business with or people that are your friends. You like them and you trust them. You want to be around them. And so that's not something you can fake. You can't say, you can't build trust if it's not genuine. People aren't going to like you, if you're not genuine. So that's probably one of the other slides that I have says, be genuine, be who you are. And, we're all different people, and there's no like magic secret formula. But whatever. One of our interns a few years ago got a job as an analyst with L&R down in Miami, and I was like, you know what? And he's since left, like a lot of people do, because it's like. And I'm not bad-mouthing them, like it's actually really good experience. You will be exposed to a broad range of things, and he was. But I said, look, make sure you take every opportunity you can to get out of your cubicle and from behind your computer screen so you can go out there and create relationships. So go to the NAOP meetings, go to the ICSC stuff, plug in with the Bergstrom Council down in South Florida, and do these things because the relationships are what matter. So. And people build them in different ways. There's no secret.
For a client, they'll have like the whole team working for them rather than just one individual broker. Do the clients ever have an issue for not having one broker that they go to that's just their guy for the job?
Yeah, it's there's usually one person that is sort of the main point of contact. So it's not nebulous that it's like they're calling into a call center or anything like that. So. There's usually, we want to make sure they're familiar with everybody on our team, but they generally have one main point of contact, which helps alleviate that difficulty. So, yeah. Man, it's probably 20 to 40, and they're all at various stages of development. So. The thing that I say a lot in meetings is, you have to wake up every day and figure out how to advance the ball on each of those. So some are maybe just in the early forming relationship stage that may lead to something a year from now. Some are, deals that are about to close next week, and others are, maybe you just signed a letter of intent and you're trying to figure out how to get it to lease. So you just, you want to kind of wake up every day and try to move each of those balls forward. But it's a lot to manage. It's an exciting business, and it's, no 2 days are alike. I look at my calendar the night before, the morning of a new day, and say, okay, this is what I've got to do today, and it never works out that way. There's always stuff that pops up, and I think that's what makes it fun. No 2 days are alike at all.
Be a little annoying because no 2 days are alike. But what is a day like for you? Like when you get up, go to work, what are you doing when you're actually at the office?
Well, Jenny says I don't do anything, so I don't know. It's so as my role has kind of changed, within the company, I try to spend more of my day like on business development opportunities or community building type of activities. So I'm involved, with the Chamber and the United Way, and like tomorrow for the first half of the day, I'll be at some Chamber events because Gatorade is in town. It's the 50th anniversary of when Gatorade was created. It was created here at UF. So they've got, some big events going on because of that. But it's, you know, it's a lot of meetings and phone calls. So I've got, you know, some deals that I still sort of manage myself, you know, through some relationships. A lot of it is, you know, when I'm in the office, it's being there as a resource for the rest of the team and helping them with what they're working on, you know, brainstorming. So we try to, it's hard in any business, I'm sure, but we try to pull ourselves out of being in a constant state of reacting to things, and we try to create systems and processes so that we have more time to be proactive and actually think strategically about how to best handle a situation or pursue a new relationship or listing. But that's, you know, it's a constant struggle. It's, you know, the freight train of emails never stops. So my days are usually pretty long. I get up early in the morning just because that's like the quiet time that I can find in my day, and I read and kind of help try to set the tone of the day like that. And then, you know, at the office, you know, till about 6, go home, spend family time until everybody goes to sleep, and then I stay up, like trying to catch up on the last couple days of emails, you know, till I pass out at midnight, and then repeat. Yeah.
You have like a collaborative database.
Mhm.
So if someone leaves your firm, do they get to take those contacts?
They're not supposed to.
Okay. So how do
You know, I've kind of struggled with this. So early on, I had somebody that joined the company, and you know, this happens. Like he thought he was providing more than what he was receiving, and left. And it was a real defining moment for me, because we had gone from a one-man show to a two-man show and back to a one-man. And so I remember thinking at that time, you know, he did, you know, he took some of the relationships that we created, and he was running with them or attempting to. And so, you know, I think the tendency that people have sometimes is, okay, I'm going to protect myself, and I need to have people sign a non-compete, and I need to not allow people to see this. And I felt like if I did that I would be creating those silos, you know. And so I decided at that point, this is going to happen. So I can either forever be a one-man show, or I got to just be open and trust and know that some people may take advantage of that, and that's going to happen. But hopefully we're building enough of a brand and solid enough relationships with our clients that they'll want to stay with us, and they're not going to be sort of seduced away if somebody tries to do something shady. So, you know, it's worked out. So we've, you know, thankfully hired really good people. We've got a great team. There's a lot of trust. I mean, we just read a book called The Go-Giver, which I read and immediately ordered it for everybody on the team and gave it to everybody, and we read it and then we discussed it. Actually, it was just this week. It was Monday. So we read these books that, you know, in a business setting, they probably would seem really touchy-feely, because they talk about things like love and trust and things like words you don't use at work, you know. But we love each other and we trust each other. And you know, if you build a company and an organization like that, then yeah, is somebody going to kind of go rogue at some point and, you know, want to go do their own thing? And, you know, could they harm some part of the company because of that? Yeah, but that's a risk I'm willing to take for the overwhelming good that comes from the rest of it. Yeah.
You took that leap of faith and started your own firm. Did you see any opportunities in the market that particularly interested you, or did you just kind of pick them up as you went along? And how do you see that market changing in the future for starting your own company?
You know, I think there's always opportunity. We have a consultant that does some work with us just on like personality testing and team building and things like that. She explained something to me that I had never known, but there's basically two personality types. So there's like a scarcity mentality and an abundance mentality. And so in a lot of it is wiring at a very young age, and it's difficult to become, you know, to start as one and become the other. It is possible, but you know, like we had someone on our team that when he would get really nervous whenever we talk about adding to our team, because he had somewhat of a scarcity mentality when he first started there, that he felt like the pie is this big, it's now split up 3 ways. If we split it up 4 ways, I get less. I looked at it as we're adding this other person to our team, the pie just got bigger. So that's the difference between scarcity and abundance. So he's now, I would say, an abundance person. Like he gets it because he's, and it was probably not easy to pull him along into that, but I think he's now drank enough of the Kool-Aid that he's seen the benefits of it. So to me, I think there's always an opportunity. Can you look back in history and say, man, if I would have started then instead of then, would that have been better? Yeah, but the difference between, and this is one of the other reasons why I left Stiles. I looked at Terry Stiles, who is still, to this day, just someone I would consider one of my greatest mentors, even though I maybe talk to him once a year. He's a guy that just went out and did it, and he figured it out. And so it's, there's going to be bumps along the road. There's going to be problems, challenges, and everything you have to overcome. But I think there's always opportunity. If you wait for the perfect set of circumstances to jump in, you will never jump in. You just got to, at some point, get in the game, All right. Oh, yeah.
From a manager's perspective, you mentioned the idea of kind of saying no to certain clientele to keep your business going in a certain direction.
Yeah.
As a first-year associate, would you recommend maybe saying no to certain things, or should you always be a yes man type person?
You mean like within your first job, like within a? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to weigh all of those situations independently. What are they asking you to do? If it's is it taking you down a track in your career that you don't want to go? What happens if you say no? Do they say, see you later? And then what? So that gets back to that conviction thing. I was, in hindsight, I was, I say now, like, I'm pretty sure I'm completely unemployable. I was never like a real good employee. Like I always, in fact, I had my boss at GE Capital. They used to make them do write-ups, about us and everything, so an annual review. And he used the word insubordinate when he described me on my review, which I thought was pretty funny. So, I think you have to. How bad do you want the job, need the job, and are you willing to take the risk that if you're going to stand up and say, I don't want to go there, I want to do this, if they say no, what happens? So depending on the situation, I mean, I would want, as an employer, I would want that feedback because I want, there's several people on our team that are doing things now that are way outside of their comfort zone that, I felt like, hey, if we go this direction, this might be a good thing and a growth opportunity. And I feel like that's how you get there. If everybody stays within their comfort zone and doesn't stand up occasionally and say, I want to do this instead of that, then no one grows. I wouldn't fire you. Let me show you guys just a couple more of these. And these are just kind of talking points that I put together. So. Have you guys ever heard of Ben Stein? He's a comedian, but he's kind of a political analyst. He's a real funny guy. Personal relationships are the fertile soil from which all advancement, all success, and all achievement in real life grows. I love that quote. That one I already said about like and trust. This is another one. It's find lots of mentors, and you guys have the opportunity again with the advisory board to really seek out these mentors. And these are a group of people that are super engaged in the University of Florida, super engaged in this program, and are invested in one way or another in helping you guys succeed. So use that to your advantage. Like that is such a great opportunity. I'm humbled to be a part of that advisory board, and I'm excited when I get to interact with these people, and I've got a job. So it's a great resource to be able to tap into, and a great group of people. Teamwork. This is, I've really realized just the power of teams when we talk about teamwork and everything constantly at Front Street. You can accomplish so much more, and this is not maybe relevant to you guys going out and seeking a new career, but when you are entrenched in a career, if you start your own business, you can do so much more with teams than you can on your own. And I think, it's hard, like, when you're first trying to establish yourself, you want to try to differentiate yourself, and you're somewhat trying to create your own personal brand. But the more you can kind of humble yourself and do things for the greater good of a team, I mean, you will naturally rise to the top, and you will accomplish so much more. You guys know who Kevin Bacon is? Who's heard of that game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? So I always say Gainesville is like a 1 degree of Kevin Bacon town, because you can kind of, and that's really helped us get on the map here. It's a pretty easy town to get to know people. Everybody's kind of 1 degree of separation away, but ask for introductions. So in the I think where's Alexis? There you are. She's going out to California, and so she's going to be in San Francisco, and there's no board members in San Francisco, but there is somebody on the board, I'm sure, that knows somebody in San Francisco that she can go meet with while she's out there. So ask for that. And again, people are willing to help and want to help. I love this quote, and this gets back to the the thing about trying to make yourself less. This is from a book called The Purpose-Driven Life, which is a book that was written a long time ago, I think like 60 years ago. But it's not about you. And so when I decided to change Front Street in 2010 and pursue brokerage, I felt very fortunate and blessed for what had happened in my life leading up to that time. And so I felt like, I had met all these people in my life that were involved in careers where they were just entrenched with like helping people. And I wanted my company, so there were things that I did personally that I felt like I was helping people, but I wanted my company to be an expression of that. And I honestly struggled with, how does commercial real estate help the world? Like, who cares? Like, we fill shopping centers and we sell dirt and we, help people buy office buildings, but what good does that really do? And so I struggled with, and I had friends that were, teachers and nurses, and they were really affecting people's lives, like literally, on a daily basis. So I was on a walk through my neighborhood this one night, and I came up with this idea that we would donate, or at the time it was just me, that I would donate every time I earned a real estate commission on a transaction, 10% of the commission revenue to a local charity. And I remember thinking two things when I finally decided that I was going to do that. One, this is probably a stupid idea. I'll be out of business soon, because you can't give away that much of your revenue. And two, no one will ever come work for me, because brokers are all about themselves, not about anything else. And they always want what's in it for me, and I want a bigger split, and then I'll come work for you. So I remember thinking, I've probably just doomed my company, but I'm going to do it. And so it was one of those kind of defining moments of taking a leap of faith and going in a direction that I just had a good feeling about, that this was the right thing to do. So fast forward now a few years, it's had the exact opposite effect that I thought it would have. So thankfully I was dumb enough to actually do it. But it's attracted all the right people to our team, because it's attracted like these like-minded people that want to be about something that's bigger than themselves and not just about them. And so it's really been the binding force of the culture of our company, which shows through to everything that we do. So it's reflected in our branding and our communications and our client relationships. In some cases, it's why people talk about us. And we're in a business that like people get real passionate about Apple products and stuff like that. People don't get real passionate about real estate brokerage companies in general. But we have like these awesome fans that like talk about us and send their friends to us and everything because of the work that we're doing in the community. So we get to we use the word impact a lot, in our company, that we get to impact our community and our clients and the places that we do business in, and that is a really cool feeling, to be able to make a difference and to give back to our community like we do. But the thing that you have to, the way you kind of get there is you can't be in it for what's in it for me, you know. And this magic thing happens when you approach life like that. If you do things and you don't expect anything in return, good stuff happens. You know, it just does. And so things that we do come back to us. I almost feel guilty now that the money that we give to charity is not enough because of what ends up coming back to us because of that. So it's really a neat thing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, over the course of the last 5 years, it's probably approaching a couple $100,000 that we've poured into the local community, and that doesn't count volunteer time and things like that. It's a variety of charities. So that program, we call it Front Street Invested. That program has evolved over time. My first inclination was on that walk, I'll let the client decide. You know, so everybody's kind of got a favorite charity, so I close a deal with you and you tell me what charity you want it to go to. And it was, you guys weren't in Gainesville at this time, but there was a guy who called himself a pastor that had this church, and he made national news because he was building bonfires and burning Korans. And I remember thinking, what if I've got a client that thinks that's a great idea? And so now all of a sudden, Front Street is funding these bonfires, I'm like, we need to kind of rein that in. So we make it our decision. We do sometimes, so we have a client that we just closed a deal with who is very involved with Boy Scouts. His 2 sons are involved there, and he's a troop leader. So he didn't ask, but we made our donation to Boy Scouts. So in Gainesville, probably about half of what we donate goes to United Way, and I'm on the board there. United Way is an organization that vets out a lot of individual charities and impact partners. And so by being involved with United Way, we're able to impact 28 different charities, indirectly. But there's, what's happened now, and so Ginny and I and one other person, we formed an invested committee, and we've sort of formalized a grant process for asks, because I probably get 3 or 4 requests a week, for sponsor this or donate for this, or we have this fundraiser, and so they're all good causes, and you want to, they're all doing great things and they're good at what they do. You want to give them all as much as you can, but again, that impact word, we want to try to have as much impact as we can that is focused. So we try not to spread it around too much, but it's hard to say no. Yeah. Nothing ever really shut down. So it's, I think selectively I would pursue development opportunities again. So it's, and that's, that adaptation, it's the same thing. So it's really just being opportunistic. So development, when I first started doing it, was an opportunistic play. And then that kind of ran its cycle. And when the recession hit, brokerage became an opportunistic thing. So I feel like because of the foundation that we've created with brokerage and the relationships that's helped us create, there will be development opportunities that we can pursue. Yeah.
The way that Front Street differentiates itself is through the culture and through company values, or are there other ways that you try to create more value for your clients?
I think it's primarily the culture. There's a really good book called Delivering Happiness. Have you guys heard of the company Zappos, it's owned by Amazon now, but it started out as an online shoe company is how they started. So the guy that founded the company, Tony Hsieh, I think is how you pronounce it, wrote this book, Delivering Happiness, and made a great point that at the end of the day, all a company really has that can't be copied is the culture. So we have a funny slideshow that Jenny put together of companies that have copied our signs, copied our logo, copied our email newsletter. Like, we actually had to hire an attorney to copyright and write nasty letters to some of these things. But to me, it was annoying when that happened, but it was also kind of funny because I think they thought, well, if we design our logo or our sign that way, that must be why they're getting business. So to me, it was kind of gratifying that they were focusing their efforts there. The real sort of thing that we have that can't be copied is our culture, and that's the only thing. So somebody could make just as nice of a website, they can make just as nice signs, they can do all these things. They can have offices in all the places we have offices, but they can't copy our culture. I think that the team approach is probably the biggest thing. You know, it's the biggest differentiator, and that again is tied to our culture. So, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, we're performing a service that is it's real estate brokerage, so it's just a mindset in which we approach it. I think that makes us different. But you know, look, everybody says they're different, so it's. You know, we have to work hard to always try to stay on the cutting edge of, you know, what more can we do? You know, how can we provide our clients different, you know, better services? And that's, you know, getting back to me trying to pull myself out of the weeds to be able to spend more time thinking about that and putting myself in the client's shoes and what do they really want from us? We just started doing these really cool activity reports that we send to our clients. That has been it's been a monumental task to get it done because we have a big listing inventory now, but the feedback that we've gotten from our clients is just amazing. So we're trying to do like all those things that our clients say they wish brokers did, you know, that no one takes the time to do. Trying to figure out a way to do that efficiently and accurately, which has been a lot of fun.
You are able to create a niche market and deliver your unique service to deliver to those customers. Do you plan to create your own yellow book and standardize your operations and in terms of maybe creating a franchise to jump other states?
I haven't pursued that. You know, I wouldn't, I think because the culture piece of it is so important, I think it's hard to do that so programmatically and sort of cookie cutter to be able to do that. So it's not a goal that I have, but I wouldn't rule it out, just like I wouldn't rule out any opportunity that would exist. So, you know, it's not something I'm proactively pursuing. Yeah. Who do you know about? So, I mean, everybody knows Bass Pro is coming, Regal Cinema is coming. There's a, what's that?
We know them and Hotel Indigo.
Right. There's an exciting sporting goods user that is signed but not yet announced. That will be a good thing. We're just doing the office leasing there, so there are some things being worked on that we don't even hear about. So we, you know, sort of get hints about it, but they're being pretty hush-hush about it. So the new strategy there is it's going to be more of an outlet play, which I think you know, it'll still be an exciting project, and it'll have an entertainment component, which will be good. But the way those outlet users work, they kind of all happen at once. So they all hold hands and jump in together because they all rely on that co-tenancy with one another. So there's I think it's next week is sort of the outlet center version of ICSC is happening, and supposedly there's some big announcements coming after that. Yeah.
So when you're trying to get office tenants in Gainesville, is it trying to get tenants that are already in Gainesville moving, or is it more about convincing someone in the surrounding area to start an office in Gainesville or moving up to Gainesville?
It's both, and so one of the strategic differentiators that I've sought out is, and this is why one of the reasons why I'm involved in the chamber and our Council for Economic Outreach and all that. We're involved in Innovation Square, which is the public-private partnership between UF and some private developers on the land that is between UF's campus and downtown Gainesville. We handle Progress Park, which is a biomed park that is in Alachua, which is 10 miles north of here. We've got some industrial projects that we represent. So we've tried to strategically, get ourselves a seat at the table for any of that economic development, whether it's local expansion in the biomed world or tech world, or just general office, or outsiders coming in. So on the Council for Economic Outreach, like we work very closely with folks at UF. You know, UF is a $800 million a year research institution. So a lot of that research spawns new ideas, and the most famous example of that is Gatorade. And so, you know, what is the next sort of Gatorade idea that is rolling out of UF that can be a company that is incubated here, grown here, and expanded here? So it's a challenge though, because a lot of those companies grow to a certain size and they leave. There's a big pull from venture capitalists that they want that company sort of right under their thumb, and so there's no big VC firms that are located here. Some of them are dipping their toe in the water, which is exciting. I think they see the opportunity here. So it's an exciting time, I think, for Gainesville. We're seeing a lot of opportunities for growth.
I have a follow-up for that.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest factor limiting Gainesville's growth? Because Gainesville is pretty much the only college town with this kind of spending that still stayed this small for so long despite success from a lot of its students that I know around the country.
Yeah, it's I think some of it is scale. So you know, Gainesville's a great place to live when you're a student. It's a great place to live when you're an old married guy with kids like me. The challenge is there's not a big enough employment base here yet that we have as much appeal as, like, you know, Orlando, Tampa, Atlanta, Charlotte, places like that for that 25 to 35-year-old. So I think you know, our population continues to grow, job opportunities continue to grow. There's the unemployment rate here is always the lowest in the state. You know, so it is a great place to find a job, you know, if you're looking. One of the challenges is there's not enough diversity in our economy that if somebody's recruited from the outside in, there's this trailing spouse syndrome where, you know, the working professional that is recruited here, their spouse most likely is also a working professional, and where are they going to work? And so they both need jobs. And so in a larger area where there's more diversity and opportunities with different companies, both of them can find jobs. So it's something that UF deals with in recruiting professors, and so they've invested a lot of money into a program that the Chamber is championing to help solve that problem and create these opportunities and create some search opportunities for them to find it. But that's probably the biggest challenge. You know, we need to hit this tipping point as a community of a certain mass where we've got opportunities and real estate. You know, so we went out to Silicon Valley earlier this year with the Chamber, and, you know, we met with Google and we met with Uber and all these fascinating companies, and I'm thinking to myself, because I know what the real estate inventory is here, like, what are we going to do if Google says they want to come here? We don't have anywhere to put them. Like, call us in 24 months when we build you a building. So we have some scale problems in terms of our real estate inventory too, which is why we're excited to be plugged in with a project like Celebration Point that has, you know, basically ready to go pads that can, you know, we can get a building out of the ground in a short period of time and have some spec space being built. This is a slide that I like a lot, and this kind of talks about, you know, flexibility, and you know, everybody sort of envisions that their life is going to be this continuous path of success, and it's going to head in this direction, and there's no bumps in the road. And, you know, the reality is, you know, there are pitfalls and things like that, but those create opportunities. We just read a book called The Go-Giver, which I think I mentioned, and this is, you know, something I'd encourage you to think about. And, you know, when you're in school and you're looking for that first job, it's hard to sort of remove yourself from that tendency of, you know, me, I need this for me and everything. But wherever you can, and whether it's now or when you get plugged into your first career and throughout your life, just I think if you seek out opportunities to serve, you'd be amazed at the opportunities that exist. And, you know, you don't go into it expecting that anything good is going to happen. You know, it's not a tit for tat kind of situation, but you know, look for opportunities to serve, and that is, talk about the best place to, you know, create relationships and make contacts and everything. And it's just it's great to be able to pour yourself into just other people or situations and things like that. This is a good one. This is about the, be genuine. And we talked a little bit we had a little round table before this, just talking about interview process and everything. And you have to be yourself, and those interviewers are always going to see right through if you're not being genuine. You have to be yourself. Unless you're not a good person, then be somebody else. I like this one too. It's all on the record. So everything you do and every interaction that you have with people, like, it's all on the record. That's there's no sort of take backs in real life. So everything that you do in your career and everything that you do, in this class and in this program and interacting with whoever, industry professionals and things like that, it's all on the record. And so, just like you guys create impressions of people that you interact with, I think it's just something important that we should all try to remember, that we're accountable for all of our own actions. This is, I mentioned comfort zones before. I really like this illustration, and we used this in one of our meetings not too long ago. So everybody tries to stay kind of within their comfort zone right here. But look for opportunities to bounce out of that. And sometimes it's scary, and sometimes it feels risky. But that is where you really grow as an individual, and that is where the good stuff happens. If you always stay in that safe little box, like you're just not going to grow. And sometimes, that takes a mentor or a boss or a coworker or a friend or somebody like that to help kind of shove you out of that. But, you guys are all young and bright, and you'll be selling yourselves short if you kind of stay within this little circle down here. Look for opportunities to push yourself out of that comfort zone. Seek inspiration in unlikely places. So we're a real estate brokerage company. I never ever look at other brokerage companies to try to figure out like what we should do or what we should do next or how we should structure our company, because I don't think many of them really do it right. So I look at advertising firms, because we market a product, right? That's kind of what we do, and marketing firms and law firms or CPA firms, because we provide consulting services. So look for inspiration, in places that are maybe not so obvious, and I think that you'll be surprised with what you can find. That we talked about. Do you guys know who Louis C.K. is, the comedian? He's a funny guy. So if you ever have seen him interviewed, he's got a really unique perspective on life. But I love this quote by him. Life is bigger than you, if you can imagine that. It isn't something you possess. It's something you take part in and you witness. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and it gets back to that same quote that really it's the first words in that book, Purpose-Driven Life. It's not about you. This is that book, Go Giver, that we just read. So this is a neat illustration that we've used in some meetings too. So big, hairy, audacious goal. So the tendency, I think, in a lot of people is to think small and safe, and this is very similar to that comfort zone thing. But set a big goal, because if you don't set a big goal, you won't reach it. You need to stretch yourself beyond that. So where these three circles intersect, what are you passionate about? What can you be the best at? And what drives your economic engine? So what can you make money at? What are you passionate about? And what are you the best at? Where those three things can converge, that's where you need to be putting your eyes on your goals. And that's what we try to do as a company. So this is, has anybody here heard of John Spence? He's a local guy, but he flies all over the world and speaks. He's got a huge audience and an amazing consulting business. He's written books, and he lives right here in our communities. He's just a huge asset to our community. He gives a lot of his time and energy to different charities in town and everything. But this is a quote from him, and I try to remember this all the time. But you become what you focus on, and like the people that you spend time with. And that's just, I think, an important lesson that I try to remember at all Does anybody have any questions? Probably kept you guys here long enough. All right. Well, I really appreciate the time, and you guys ask great questions, and I appreciate being here. Thanks a lot.